all 100% of our mental capacity. Those people that tend to be a little bit passive or a little bit aggressive, they're not unlocking that gateway between the conscious and the subconscious. So I just wanted to explain that for anyone that hasn't been through that. So conscious mind, top 10, subconscious, where all of our skills and our competency is. And there's a gateway between those. When we're passive, passiveness is where we tend to overthink things. Passiveness is if I'm here, I'm putting other people above me. Passiveness, according to the science, is a I stink, you're great mentality. Stephen Covey would call that a lose-win relationship. So when we're in this lose-win relationship, we're putting ourselves down and we're, in a sense, being too soft in our inner self-talk. And when we don't own that conscious mind, it's the law of occupied space. If we don't occupy the space, what we do to compensate is we overthink things in order to occupy the space. And it's really easy to let everyone else's thoughts fill in that space because we're not occupying it. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that we let doubts or fears in. I'm saying we let other people's ideas and thoughts be too dominant in our own conscious mind instead of our own. Again, I'm not saying this is necessarily negative. We're just too soft and we let all these other thoughts occupy the space. Confidence is the skill around how you navigate people. It's the biggest people skill. So passiveness is we're too soft with ourselves and it leads to overthinking, which is like the analysis by paralysis. I put that down the bottom. And when we're passive, we overthink things, we clog that gateway, and we're not letting ourselves use all of our abilities. The complete opposite to that at the top is arrogance. And I'm not going to spend too much time on these two. I just want to break this down for anyone that hasn't been through the training. Arrogance is a lose-lose. Arrogance is if I'm up here, I'm putting everyone beneath me in order to maintain my confidence. Both passiveness and arrogance is rooted in inactivity. Arrogant people aren't really working on self-development. They're not trying to learn and get better. They're not learners. They're non-learners. And so to maintain their confidence in comparison with other people, they have to put others beneath them to maintain their confidence. Passive people are relying on others to always pick them up to be confident. So always relying on external people to tell them how great they are. So passive people relying on others to build confidence, arrogant people relying on having everyone beneath them to be confident. They're both rooted in that lose-lose mentality for arrogance and lose-win for passive. Now, one step beneath arrogance is aggression. And that's where we really want to talk about today. Aggression is I'm better than you. Aggressive people want to be right. They want to be first. They want to send the last emoji. So it's a win-lose. Let's go down now one there for assertiveness. Assertiveness is very much in between passive and aggression. Assertiveness is I'm good, you're good. So that's the two we really want to address today. Of the four mindsets that we can all oscillate into at different points, even in a given day, the research does also say we predominantly live in one of the four mindsets. We have muscle memory habits that are stronger in one of the four. Assertiveness is I'm good, you're good. There's no comparison with others, really. We're not competing with others. Assertiveness is the only of the four mindsets where the competition is with who we used to be. So it's always about learning and getting better with assertiveness, whereas aggression and passiveness, it's about comparison with other people and where we fit in the pecking order with others. And so a couple other things I want to share. When we're in aggressive mode, aggression is the fight out of the fight or flight response. Fight or flight response is whenever we're reactive, it triggers fight or flight. And fight or flight is a survival and emotional response. So meaning whenever we're passive or aggressive, we become very emotional. We want to have emotions, but we become very emotional. Passiveness is the flight response. And that's where we disengage. So just if you're taking notes, aggression is fight, passiveness is flight. Aggressiveness is a win-lose. When we're aggressive, we tend to become quite selfish because we're only focusing on us and what we want. And we're in that fight mode. So now I really want to spend the time for pretty much the rest of the time on these two. Aggressive people produce. They get things done. They can perform, but at a cost. I'm not even talking about the cost of others yet. There's a cost within themselves, because when you're always in fight mode, you're burning energy, and you're going to get to a point you just wear yourself out and you want to be done. I do some work in the NBA, and I get no one cares about sport. Not everyone cares about sports, but the NBA is the National Basketball Association for those that don't really worry about sports too much. But I work with this professional basketball team, and it was just about 2 months ago that one of the star players on the team was so burned out. He told the boss, the GM, and the head coach that I'm done. I want to retire from the game. This guy's getting paid an awful lot of money and plays a big role. And they put them into fight or flight response. Hence, I ended up spending some time over there and helping this individual get out of the fight or flight response. Well, there's another option. Fight or flight is a survival technique, and that often we go into survival technique when we're comparing ourselves with others. Can you see that? It's not a healthy way to live, being in fight or flight when you're always trying to compete with everyone else. The third option, though, is awareness. Awareness is in direct opposition of fight or flight. When you're aware of yourself and you're aware of others in particular. That self-awareness is called metacognition. Awareness is what assertiveness leads to. Assertiveness is true confidence. Assertiveness is I'm good, you're good, as I mentioned. When we're assertive, we're focusing more on the task and the relevancy of the task and not worrying so much about people issues. It's not about being right. Can you see when we're aggressive and we always want to be right? It causes so many problems in the workplace. I had an employee just the other day, last week, saying this individual spent all day trying to argue his point to be right. That's a whole day of lost production because we're just too busy trying to be right. And instead of actually focusing on the task. The task is where the work is. The task is where the skills are. So assertiveness is in between. And I just wanted to make a point here too, before I ask any questions here. There's a scale on this assertiveness. There's high levels of assertiveness and lower levels of assertiveness. Now, to really break down about halfway through here, how do we do it? The how. Assertiveness is 7% of everything we communicate. Now, let's go back to the conscious mind. The conscious mind is a reverberating nerve, meaning it's like an electrical circuit. It communicates. The three ways we communicate first are our words. So how we choose our words are massive. 7% of everything we communicate is words, and it begins with words. But our tone is 38%. And the tone is really what assertiveness is. We want to have a firm tone in our own thoughts. When we have a firm tone, we are occupying the space. And when we occupy the space, we're still thinking, but we're not overthinking because our thoughts are deliberate now. When I go through all this training, I'm always at first helping people to be proactive, not reactive, which proactive is playing to win, reactive is playing not to lose. But once we get to the confidence level, confidence is the skill set where we transition or mature from proactive to deliberate. And when we're deliberate, we're the ones in control of our own destiny. We're the ones in control of us. And to do that, we need to be very firm with our own self-talk. We need to be firm with our words. When we're firm, we're thinking, but now we're not overthinking. In comparison, when we're aggressive, we just become emotional and we're just angry most of the time. Even though we think we're communicating, we're just really communicating bad energy. We're not really communicating with any sort of precision and accuracy with our language. What's interesting to me is the research actually has come out and said, when we first fall into aggression, when we become angry, at first production goes up, but only for a short period of time. What the researchers said is no human being has been able to control anger for any length of period of time. And the reason why, when you first go into aggression, you're still communicating through your language skills. But as you stay in that aggressive state of mind for too long, you lose the language skills. You've stopped communicating and you're just mad, which is bad energy. So I'm just going to pause for a minute here because I think that is a massive difference between aggression and assertiveness. When we're aggressive, it's often just anger. It's just, ah, and we're just communicating just anger, and we've stopped using our words. Assertiveness is firm words, firm self-talk, firm words first. Second, body language is 55%. So the second application of assertiveness is strong or firm body language. Those are the two biggest skills, firm in your head and firm with others. And it's a balance. So we got to find that nice sweet spot and balance. I think I'm role modeling it right now with my tone as I'm speaking on this team session. There is no way I can speak with this level of assertiveness when I get home and I talk to my wife. I need to bring the assertiveness down. As you can see, I slow down. My volume is a little softer, but not too low. I don't want to get into the part where I'm passive. And then when I'm passive, I don't communicate well because that irritates other people. By the way, when we're passive, we're not communicating clearly. We're stumbling over our words. We're mumbling things. We overthink things. That annoys aggressive people. So the more passive we get, the more it forces others to be aggressive to create a natural equilibrium. The more we assert ourselves, the more it gives people permission to meet us halfway. To me, going back to the first story about this wonderful individual at this company, she communicates very well. Her communication is precise and exact and focused on things that are relevant. That's how it's supposed to be when we're in that massive production mode. We're communicating what needs to be done, and we're wanting that feedback. Communication is two-way. Communication is precise and exact. And I love communicating with her because I know exactly what I need to do. I know what she's doing, and there's the collaboration. So that's a lot. And maybe I should get to the next one. So assertiveness, again, is a win. Then the second win is a win for others. And that's the collaboration piece I just mentioned. So there's the third skill. First skill is firm tone of voice. Second is strong posture or firm posture, or body language, I should say. And then the third one is there's space between, just as there's space in our heads, there's space between people. 50% of the space is technically mine, 50% is yours. If we are passive and we don't communicate and we don't own the space, say we only occupy 50% of the space, nearly every living organism will take advantage of us if we don't assert ourselves. That's the backbone. We need to have a backbone. Those of us on this call that have a tendency to be passive, we need to have a backbone and assert ourselves and try and find that 50%. I'm not saying it's easy, it's hard, but it's worth trying to find that 50% and occupy that space. If you don't, people will subconsciously take advantage of you. Even though they're not necessarily bad people, they'll do it because it's a natural pattern that we get in. Aggressive people are always trying to occupy more of your space. So stay strong and occupy 50%. And when people are angry, when aggressive people are angry at you and they're yelling at you, keep using your words. What we tend to do when we're passive, when aggressive people are mad or upset, is we just go into flight mode and we stop talking. Keep using your words. Keep communicating in those moments when people are trying to bully you. Keep using your words. They're trying to intimidate you by anger. Don't be intimidated by the anger. Literally say that to them. Say, I'm not intimidated by your anger. I'm not intimidated by your tantrum. We need to solve this problem. Here's the problem. Bring it back to the task. Bring it back to the situation. When people go in passive mode, maybe because they feel like you're being too aggressive, bring the tone down. Bring it down and use kind words. Even though you're being assertive, try to use a kind tone in delivering your message to be able to create win-wins. Again, assertive people aren't trying to be right. Assertive people are trying to find the best solution. I want to say that again. Assertive people are not trying to be right. They're trying to find awareness so that we can all find the best solution. Aggressive people always want to be right. We got to break free of this. It's not about being right. It's about finding the right solutions, the best solutions for everyone. Okay, sorry, that's a lot. Obviously, I talk about this topic an awful lot. So I'm just going to pause for a minute. Any questions or thoughts?
Sorry, trying to get to my unmute really quick. If someone was having a hard time with the balance between passiveness and assertiveness, would you say that working on their confidence would be the first step?
Yeah, I'd say working on assertiveness, being assertive with yourself, practicing your words and communicating what you want to communicate. Assertiveness is very good communication. That's what assertiveness really is.
And then if we're finding a hard time with the balance between aggressiveness and assertiveness, then we need to maybe do an emotion check. We need to take our emotions out of the picture.
Yeah, get control. It's good to be, energy is important. Emotion is energy. We got to have good energy, but we've got to get out of this angry energy. The world right now, there's too many people in fight or flight because of the COVID and the uncertainty of the future. It's putting so many people into fight or flight. It's burning everyone out. You've got to get out of that and get into awareness. Awareness is intelligence. Just so awareness is consciousness and intelligence. And I'm just making this statement again. Too many people are in fight or flight. It's burning everyone out. This is why aggressive people often change jobs every 4 to 5 years. It's why coaches change jobs every 4 to 5 years, because there's this 4 to 5 year window that you can sustain before you're so burned out you need to reset and go somewhere else, because you've just been too intense, too uptight, and too angry, quite frankly, for too long.
Yes, agreed. Okay, Amanda, sorry, I think I cut you off.
You're okay. I'm curious to know what your solution is to your client where clearly there's a bias. I think that does exist, that there's a bias that exists that women who are assertive are really being aggressive when they're not.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, because I coach female tennis for 13 years. It bugs me, this. And so what I think we need to do, Amanda, is we got to control the narrative. That's a massive skill in today's day and age. I feel like I spend so much of my time correcting false narratives. And so I just feel like we got to stay in control of the narratives. When people use that language, I think we're direct and use this language and say, I'm being assertive here. I'm not being aggressive. I'm communicating and finding win-wins here. I think we got to use that language. I'm trying to collaborate. I want win-wins. We got to have try to find this equal communication as best as possible. I'm not being aggressive. I'm being assertive. And I'm being direct here because we need to be direct. We can talk about social stuff when it's time to talk about social. So many people think that being emotional is talking about social stuff. No, when we're in the fight, not in the fight, we're not at war, we're not in the trenches, we're not at war, but when we're working, the precision and accuracy with our communication is a sign of huge competence, not aggression. Agreed, Amanda?
Yeah, for sure.
That's what competency is. No, I'm competent and I know what I'm doing. I'm being deliberate here. That's why my communication is so precise and exact. Aggression is emotional when we've lost control of our communication.
Amanda, I'm glad you brought that up. I actually had written that down as one of the questions I wanted to ask too. And I think that sometimes we mistakenly think that that comes from men only, but I think that women do it to women too. I think that we stereotype other women who are being assertive as aggressive as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it all the time. I'm all for equality everywhere. What color skin, nationality, your level of boldness, whatever, equality. To me, though, what bugs me is when people bully other people. I don't like that, no matter where it's happening. Female to female, female to male, male to female, male to male. We're too advanced as a human race here. We've got to work hard on finding this middle ground and being assertive there's no room for bullying this, and there's no room for putting people in their place. And we're not even really talking about arrogance here, which is a whole different mindset altogether. I think we've got to work hard. And the culture, and I could bring that up, the best culture by far. So mindset is for the individual, culture is the collective mindset of the group. The research proves the best culture by far in any company is a commitment culture, which is about building trust. Well, there's no trust if we're being aggressive or passive. We're just dominating people or letting them dominate us. Trust comes when we're assertive and we're collaborating. And when we collaborate, man, the human race does incredibly well when we collaborate.
So Craig, there's a question in the chat box that says, how do you work on your confidence?
Great. So there's 4 actual steps that we may not have time to hit today, but I'm going to throw them out really quickly. So working hard on your firmness of your tone, be super aware of your tone. You can't fix anything without awareness. The research shows without awareness, there is no change. It also says the greater the awareness, the faster the change. And as I mentioned earlier on this session, awareness is the opposite to fight or flight. So the more aware you are, this is why be careful of your tone of voice. Because as you're aware of your tone of voice, you can change it and control it and modulate it up and down depending on how you need to. So the big skill is be aware of your tone, be aware of your body language as well, and just even the volume of how you speak, be aware of. But then there's 4 building blocks. So these are the 4, and it would take a whole nother session to really go through them in detail. But number 1 is your confidence is built, or assertiveness is built over your previous performance accomplishments. And all of you that have been through the training are going to be mad at me for saying that, but that's the 3. Always going over the 3 things you did well, because confidence is trust in your skills. So always going over 3 things you did well builds that trust in your subconscious. So that's number 1. So you always, meaning what the science says, you always learn from yourself first. Second, vicarious experiences, which means you learn from others second. And that is critical. Some people may say that's just semantics. It's not. You always want to learn from yourself first, learn from others second, so you don't give your locus of control away. Because otherwise, if you're always learning from others, you're always needing their approval. That's a lose-win whenever we're doing that. So always learning from ourselves first, learn from others second. Third, it's called verbal persuasion. So previous performance accomplishments, vicarious experiences, verbal persuasion, meaning sometimes that tone, when we're too passive, we just got to pick up the tone. And sometimes in your head, you just got to be strong in your own head so that you're owning the space. So verbal persuasion is the tone. And then lastly, physiological states. Physiological states is body language. You've got to walk the walk. And for some people, they want to call that swagger. If you want to call that swagger, go ahead. But you've got to have the swagger. You've got to walk tall and straight. We're not saying walking arrogant or aggressive. We want to walk tall and straight, look people in the eyes, be firm with your handshakes. That's the body language piece too. So previous performance accomplishments, vicarious experiences, verbal persuasion, and physiological states is how you really continue to build confidence all the time. Everybody good? Plenty of stuff to chat about when you do your discussions there. Sorry, that's a lot.
That's a lot to get through in the short amount of time we gave you. Is there any more questions for Dr. Manning?
My screen is so small, I don't really see that very well.
It says, any thoughts on the opposite, how to be less aggressive?
Yeah, just less aggressive to me is just bringing that down. When you're less aggressive, you're just really responsible for yourself first. You're not comparing yourself to others. And the biggest way to break up that less aggression is stop trying to control people, stop trying to be right, just stay focused on the task and what you're doing and be responsible for you first. Because when we're aggressive people tend to be overly external. It's called externalization. They're too worried what everyone else is doing. And so they're hyper aware of others and they have blind spots. They lack self-awareness. So the biggest way there to kind of bring your energy and focus down from aggression is really work hard on more self-awareness to create that balance. You want to be self-awareness first, then aware of others second, in that order. If you're not self-aware, you can have blind spots and you don't even notice that that's that lack of awareness. And when you are overly externally aware and you lack self-awareness, you can't even hear your tone. You don't even notice your body language. Without awareness, you can't create change. There's no change without awareness. There's no control without awareness. That's why self-awareness is massive, because that self-awareness gives us the power to make change. And just to quote the research here, just to support this, there's a phenomenon in quantum physics that's called the observer effect. And what it states is at a subatomic level, just by observing these particles. The particles change, meaning there's hard science to prove this. The more awareness, that's what mindfulness is. The more aware you are, the greater the capacity you have to create change.
So Craig, I'm trying to figure out how to word my question, but I think your answer plays right into what I'm trying to ask about awareness. I guess it's, how do you gain that awareness of when being what we might traditionally think of as assertive? I mean, I think I've listened to you long enough to understand that assertive sometimes means holding the line, but sometimes it also means knowing when to back down, right? And so, like, an example, the one that's coming to mind is, I was reading a Wall Street Journal article last week about knowing when to negotiate for more salary and when not to. And it talked about how so many people have been taught in these types of conversations, you need to be assertive and you need to negotiate. But what's actually happening is, you know, HR is aware and they're really making their best offer up front. And so there's this whole rash of people who are losing job offers because they're just bound and determined to negotiate and they feel like they're being assertive. But really they're reading the room wrong, if that's a good way to say it. Like, they're just not aware, right? So how do you become aware of that type of situation? What's your advice on that?
Yeah, and so Janice, I love your question, and this is why, and you know the roadmap that I've worked through so much. To me, confidence is the 8th skill, but if you go back 2 skills to the living in the present skill, the living in the present skill is massive, to be aware of the situation, which that's a massive intelligence level to gain. So you're aware of the client you're working with or the situation. Like, I'm here at BYU, and when I left BYU for 5 years and they asked me to come back, I knew how much they could pay. I knew what the limit was around about what I could push it to. So when I come in, I just said, yeah, this is what would work for me. And they're like, that's actually exactly what we were thinking about. There was no negotiation, was done. Deal was closed that day, within that hour. But I had to have that awareness of them and their situation first before I could be assertive. And I think that's massive, is that awareness piece is huge. That's why I love assertiveness. It's a win-win, meaning be aware of what works for you and be aware of what works for the business or the company or the client or the other person. So you're finding that middle gap. To me, somebody coming in there trying to negotiate a contract without the awareness of the company, and they're just asking for money, they think they're being assertive. I think that's aggression. I think they're trying to, that's where they're becoming a little overly selfish in that moment, unfortunately. But Janice, I love the question. This is such a balance. This is where balance is working hard to find a nice balance. And that's what I think really skilled people in this do a good job. Like you say, it's kind of a sliding scale, and they're just good at adapting and finding that healthy balance with people. I agree. I think that is a big skill, is finding that balance.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me I love talking about this particular topic. So thanks for the invitation.
Well, we really appreciate you coming. And if you want more of what Dr. Manning has to say, attend his meetings, I think, that are on Tuesdays sometimes. I haven't been for a little bit, but and also I know you have a book out there is it called The Fearless Mind, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Thanks.
All right. Grab a copy of that, and that will get you more information. All right. Thank you again, and we'll let you drop off if you'd like. If you'd like to just join a discussion group, you're welcome to, but we're going to break out into discussion groups now. I think Sierra's going to break us out with a group leader. We'll go over the questions that she posted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have you guys all in different groups, and I'm going to send out a message like 1 minute till the end, just saying like we have 1 minute left, and then we're just going to come back and wrap up at the end. So you guys have the next about 20-25 minutes to talk. And like Sheila said, there's a group leader for each group, and the group leader knows who they are, so they will kind of take the reins. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and start these rooms, and then you guys should all automatically just be broken off into the different groups.